I'm back with another book review. This time I finished the book yesterday, so I'm doing this video much sooner after I finished the book, so that's good. It's still fresh on my mind, and I haven't started another book yet, so I think I'll be good this time. So I just finished Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. This is one of my nice Easton Press leather-bound books. I'm a big collector for Easton Press. You know, they just look so nice in my bookcase. And eventually I'll probably do like a bookshelf tour, shelf portrait, and show you the rest of my collection. But so this is the last Jane Austen book I needed to read. I'd read, you know, like I mentioned in my introduction video, I was really big into classics when I was younger, probably late high school, college time. I was really into reading all the classics, and Jane Austen is a major classic. And being a female author, I was very drawn to her in the time period, so I am a big fan and read most of her work years and years ago. So Sense and Sensibility, for some reason, I never got around to it and ended up starting reading other books instead and never finished her collection. So I think I had actually listened to an audio book of this about 10 years ago now on my road trip to Alaska with my friend, but I couldn't tell you I remembered any of it when I was reading it now. So and then I had never watched the movie adaptation of it either, because I was always waiting to read the book first. So, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as Jane Austen books go, I would say this is not my favorite. I don't know if it's because I'm older now reading it, and, you know, I'm not as romanticizing, you know, love like I was probably when I was younger, of meeting somebody. I don't know if that's it or what, but I just couldn't really get into the characters and the storyline as much as I think I have with the others. So, you know, Pride and Prejudice obviously being, you know, probably my favorite. You know, Emma, Mansfield Park, Sanditon, you know, since it's been so long, I can't really remember those plot lines either, and I don't have these videos to go back to watch. But obviously Pride and Prejudice stands out. You know, I was a big fan of the Colin Firth movie from the BBC. So that's just, you know, everybody knows Pride and Prejudice. So but for this one, you know, it wasn't my favorite, and I just, you know, as I was reading it, I was really trying to finish it last night, and I was kind of just zooming through it, but I still very much enjoy her writing style, and how I'm just very impressed that people wrote like this way back when, and just with the language that's used and the description, you know, without it sound just like, you know, conversational dialogue just going on and on, as I feel like sometimes my writing can be when I'm relaying a story. It's like, and then this happened, and then this, and then this. And obviously I don't use much dialogue in my writing when I'm trying to tell a story, and maybe I should, I don't know. But now that I am writing more, I can notice in other authors their writing style, you know, and just makes me think a lot more about, you know, analyzing the style rather than just like following the story and the plot and the characters. I'm focusing more on, you know, how she's describing things and how she places things, just a little bit more analytical like that, which, you know, obviously I wasn't doing when I was younger. But I also, you know, it being written so long ago, the language is, obviously hard to understand sometimes. And I have to reread it to make sure I was understanding what was happening. And that's why I like the movies, because, it's just a lot more clear, where I feel like the writing back then is a little ambiguous when it comes to how feelings are portrayed, and especially with the main character Elinor, of how she's very like stoic and doesn't express her feelings, like her sister Marianne is very outgoing and emotional and sensitive. And so it kind of was hard. Her character, I couldn't really get into her character for that reason. And maybe that's because I am a very much a Marianne, I'm a very emotional person, and so I just couldn't really connect to Elinor's character. And I was actually kind of confused, and it didn't even hit me until I was probably almost done with the book, because I thought at the beginning, every character, there's like a main character. And I thought, I guess at the beginning, that Marianne was that main character, because it was focused on her relationship with Willoughby. And then as it progressed, I was like, wait a second, it's actually more about Elinor and how Elinor is interacting with Marianne and Edward. And so it was, I don't know why that it like just hit me at the end that, wait, no, Elinor is the main character. But like I said, I probably didn't like the book just because I couldn't really relate to her character as being someone that doesn't express herself as much. And, for that reason, I didn't really like her as much. And then just like the story about Willoughby and just like the betrayal, I just feel like it's an Austen trope, right? It's very similar to Wickham in Pride and Prejudice. Like, I feel like I could predict what was going to happen. That Marianne would fall in love, and then he would betray her somehow, and then I guess I wasn't really foreseeing that to be on Elinor's side with Edward. Like, I wasn't expecting him to have been engaged. But I mean, it wouldn't be an interesting book, right? If both main, characters fell in love and it was a happy ending. Like, there has to be some drama. I get that. But it just seemed predictable, especially when you read her other books. Like, that's what she does. And I thought it was also interesting that, Willoughby with a W and Wickham with a W, like maybe there was someone in her life, a William or someone who like really did her wrong, and she was making all of her characters that, were kind of villainous, their names start with a W. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But, and I was really kind of confused. I kept going back and forth. Like I said, I was not sure who was the main character. And so I was like, well, I mean, obviously the book is going to end happily. Like, they're going to, be married, and, of course they have to be married. And, but I kept going back and forth of like, wait, who's going to end up with who? And so as I'm reading it, I kept thinking, obviously Colonel Brandon, loves Marianne. But there was a time there where I was like, he's sharing all this personal information with Elinor, and they were getting closer. And I was like, wait a second, maybe it's going to turn out that he's going to fall in love with Elinor and they will be together. Because it really didn't seem in the book that Elinor really loved Edward. And that's what I was so confused about, because obviously there was some kind of attachment there. But when he went away, and I know like she was stoic and she wasn't expressing her feelings, but I never really got from her that she was really in love with him. And then when it comes out that he, the woman who he is engaged with, Lucy Steele, tells Elinor like, oh no, I've been engaged with this person. It just, obviously she doesn't want to act shocked to Lucy, but even in the writing, it was just like, it wasn't like the climax that I was expecting it to be. It just kind of was like, oh, okay. And then later you find out that Lucy ends up marrying Edward's brother, and so Edward is free and had loved Elinor all along, and so they end up getting married, and then Colonel Brandon ends up getting married with Marianne because Willoughby, is a jerk. And so obviously it all ended like it was supposed to, but it wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't that exciting to me, because I was like, Edward wasn't that exciting of a character either. Like, they talked about how he was like boring and didn't have any taste, or at least Marianne was saying that, like, he didn't have strong feelings on things like books or music and stuff, which made it seem like he didn't really love Elinor. And so it was just kind of like, it wasn't that exciting compared to like the Marianne and Willoughby. Like, there was obvious love there, and that was tragic what happened, and he was selfish and blah blah blah, decided, chose money over Marianne, and married someone else. And then it was good for Colonel Brandon, because Colonel Brandon always loved Marianne, but it was like, I guess Marianne's gonna grow to love him. But it wasn't like, so I don't know, it just wasn't the best of her stories. So I wasn't totally sure I was going to finish it yesterday, and so it was getting later and later, and I was like, well, if I finish it, I'm going to have to watch this movie tonight. And good for me, I went to the library earlier to rent it. And so as soon as I finished the book, I watched the movie, and I don't know, it's just, Hugh Grant is so young, and Alan Rickman is Colonel Brandon, and he is great in it, but for Hugh Grant as Edward, I was just like, eh. And Emma Thompson as Elinor, I just thought that they were like much older than they should have been. Like, the actors themselves were like 35 in this movie, like, and I looked it up because I was like, no, they're supposed to be much younger. Like, obviously Colonel Brandon was supposed to be like 35, and Alan Rickman was like 50 when he filmed that. And so obviously older than Marianne, Kate Winslet, so that kind of worked, and Kate Winslet looked pretty young, so that worked. But Emma Thompson just seemed a little too old for the role at that time, at 35. Like, I thought she was supposed to be like 23 or 21 or something. So it didn't really work for me. And her and Hugh, I don't know, they didn't have like that much chemistry, which makes sense because in the book they didn't really have much chemistry. At least that's what it came off as. And so it just was kind of dull. I wanted to say, though, Hugh Laurie is in this as Mr. Palmer, and I think he was one of the best characters. He was, he's kind of he's rude and droll, as Mrs. Palmer talks about him in the book, and I thought he was pretty funny, and I thought he made the movie, so he was one of my favorites. But overall, I'm glad that I finally read it, and got to watch the movie, and there might be another adaptation that I'll watch just because I like to watch them all. And Austen, books are always made into movies, so there's always plenty to choose from. So if you're gonna read Austen, I probably say you could skip this one. Like, if you could only read one, I'd say skip this one and go to Pride and Prejudice. It's the main one, masterpiece. So that's all I've got to say, and till next time, keep reading.